Oxnard Airport Authority, same time, same date.
And if you all join me in doing a pledge of allegiance, please rise and put your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
Under God, indivisible, with liberty
and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. Will staff please do a roll call vote, or a roll call?
For Camarillo Airport Authority, Supervisor Long. Supervisor Long. Okay. Supervisor Zaragoza.
Here.
Councilmember Molshay.
Present.
Councilmember Craven.
Here.
Bill Thomas.
Here.
Camarillo has a quorum. For Oxnard Airport Authority, Supervisor Long is absent. Supervisor Zaragoza.
Here.
Mayor Flynn. Okay. Councilmember Perallo.
Here.
Walter Calhoun.
Here.
And Supervisor Long, are you on the line now?
I am. Thank you for asking. So I'm here for both Camarillo and Oxnard.
Thank you very much. Oxnard has a quorum as well.
All right, we'll move to the approval of minutes. Do I have a motion for approval of the Camarillo Airport Authority minutes for July 9th?
And Bill Thomas, I move to approve.
Craven, second.
Okay, withdraw.
Give Charlotte a second. Move to approve.
Yes. Will second.
Thank you. We'll move to approve.
Okay. Supervisor Long.
Yes.
Supervisor Zaragoza.
Yes.
Councilmember Molshay.
Yes.
Councilmember Craven.
Yes.
Bill Thomas.
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously.
For the Oxnard Airport Authority, the minutes for July 9th, do we have a motion to approve?
I so move.
Second?
Long will second.
Thank you. Just before we take the vote, I've already told staff I want to answer to a question on item C. I mentioned that the Environmental Protection Agency had regarded some underground plume issue, and I'd requested the information be shared with Aspen Helicopters, to which Ms. Henry responded that she was not familiar with the notice. Perallo requested the airport staff find the notice and share it. Was that done?
Yes, this is Kip Turner, Director. The staff tracked that notice down and shared it with Aspen Helicopters.
Thank you very much. We have a roll call vote, please.
Supervisor Long.
Yes.
Supervisor Zaragoza.
Yes.
Councilmember Perallo.
Yes.
Walter Calhoun.
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously.
To item 4, public comment period. Do we have any public comments?
Not for item 4.
Not for item 4. All right. We'll move past unfinished business. We have none, and on to new business. Mr. Perallo, I'll let you take it away with the Oxnard Airport Authority.
Okay, on under new business 6A, we have the subject, receive and file a summary of the tenant workshop held on August 25th, 2020 for the Oxnard Airport Runway 7-25 taxiway connectors and parallel taxiway pavement reconstruction project. The recommendation is staff requests that your commission authority receive and file a summary of the tenant workshop held August 25th, 2020 for the Oxnard Airport 725 tax and discussion. It says, I believe that there will be someone making a presentation. And I'm not sure who that is.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. This is Kip Turner, Director of Airports. I would like to just introduce or hand this off to Aaron here in a moment, but this is we basically had our first public workshop in relation to the final design efforts for the Oxnard runway reconstruction project that's been underway now for quite some time, collectively in planning and conceptual design and other things leading up to the point of final design and then construction that we anticipate for next summer. This workshop was held on August 25th, and I will pause here and hand it to Aaron Powers to introduce the Mead and Hunt theme for the presentation, and stop and hand it to Aaron.
Good evening. Thank you, Kip. As our director mentioned, we held a workshop August 25th, and Mead and Hunt did a very similar presentation to what they're going to share with everyone tonight. During the presentation, we also were able to conduct a survey to get some early information and input from tenants to help us in our design. And the Mead and Hunt team will go ahead and also share those results. Mead and Hunt, as Kip had mentioned, is the consultant that will be presenting tonight. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Chuck McCormick.
Okay, thank you very much, Aaron, and Kip as well. So again, my name is Chuck McCormick. I'm with Mead and Hunt. I'm the project manager for this design project. And with us during the presentation tonight is we have three other folks from Mead and Hunt. One is Jeff Leonard. He's the principal in charge of the project. And then we also have Jeanette Larrera. She's the lead of the civil design side of the project. And then we also have Alex Radonovich. He's leading the phasing of the projects, and you'll see some of the alternates and the phasing that we're going to discuss during this presentation. Can we go next slide, please? And then, like Aaron and Kip had both mentioned, we held the first public workshop on August 25th, and leading that public workshop from the logistics side was Ariane and Associates. They're part of the Mead and Hunt team and specialize in public outreach. So next slide, please. So again, like they mentioned, this is a similar presentation like that we gave during that first public workshop about a week and a half ago. So really, why are we here? We're going to discuss the purpose of the project. We're going to go over the project overview and a description of the project, the options for the project, and those are the construction types of options, whether a rehabilitation or a reconstruction. We're going to discuss the phasing of the project, some of the alternates that we've considered for the project. We're going to, during the public workshop, like we mentioned, we had a survey. We're going to show you the results of that survey that was conducted during the public workshop, so it's great to see those results. And a little backwards here on our 2 bullet points. We'll discuss with you future meetings and contact information on the public workshop, and then we'll take questions and answers for questions at the end. So next slide, please. So as far as the project overview, as we all know, Oxnard Airport, it's a public use airport in the county of Ventura, located in Oxnard, California. The airport consists of a single runway, as shown here, runway 725. We have 5 connector taxiways, Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, and Echo. And then we have a full-length parallel taxiway, taxiway Foxtrot. So as far as the project, as far as what is being designed is and would be constructed, would be the removal of the existing pavement surface and excavation down to the subgrade. It's going to include construction of a new pavement section and a crush aggregate base course shoulder. We'll include the application of new pavement markings, so all the new markings on the runway and the taxiways. Then an installation of an under drain system and adjustments to the storm drain for the airport to have improved storm drain. And then the project will also include the installation of new runway edge lights and taxiway lights, and a MALSAF light. So the MALSAF is the approach lighting system that serves the runway 25 approach. So MALSAF is an FAA-owned system, but it's a medium intensity approach lighting system with sequence flashers. And then finally, the project will include the installation of new airfield signs. Next slide, please. So as far as the project description, the project will be designed and it's going to be bid in a single bid package, but the project will include a base bid and up to 2 bid alternates. And then so as far as the breakdown of that project, the base bid is going to include the runway 725 reconstruction. And that's in the base bid of the project. And then bid alternate 1 would include the taxiway connectors, taxiways Alpha through Echo, and their reconstruction. And then bid alternate 2 is going to include the parallel taxiway Foxtrot reconstruction. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Jeff Leonard, and he's going to talk with you through a few of the slides. Jeff?
Excuse me, this is the chair of the Oxnard. I have a couple of questions. As there will be people that are very interested in this project, and I do see an icon up there like a pointer, can we have some coordination so if we're going to identify where things are done, you can point out where it is with a pointer? And the second, I think most important, how many people attended this workshop? I was hoping I'd hear that right off the bat. Go ahead.
Okay, sure. As far as the public workshop, we had approximately 70 people attend that workshop. And then the survey, that you'll see the survey results. We'll have that in a slide later on. You can see what the results were of the survey and the 2 questions that we asked. And then also we'll summarize the questions that were asked during the survey. And there was 3 different methodologies that those questions were asked on.
Thank you. And again, how many people attended?
There was approximately 70 people.
70.
At the workshop.
Thank you very much.
Sure. Okay, go ahead, Jeff.
All right, thank you. Next slide, please. So time changes everything, as we know. So the day after pavement's constructed, it starts to wear and deteriorate due to several different factors, including climate, construction materials, aircraft operations, surface and subsurface drainage capabilities, as well as construction quality. The last major reconstruction project for the Oxnard Airport runway taxiway system was in 1992, almost 28 years ago, followed by surface treatment seal coat projects in 2003 and 2012. As the ongoing engineering consultant for the County of Ventura, we perform periodic, very detailed pavement analysis of the airfield pavements. So we typically do them every 3 to 5 years, and the last pavement analysis that we did was in 2016, and dating back to 2012, the pavement analysis resulted in a runway condition of being fair, which is about the middle to the lower end of the spectrum as it continues to age. So the overall objective of our of the efforts leading up to this project, as well as the analysis, is to keep the runway in a safe operational condition. Next slide, please. So as we look at maintaining the safety and the operational use of the runway, we do realize that it is time for a major project improvement. There's really 2 options available that the FAA views as viable options for use in airport improvement program funding. One is the rehabilitation, which is an option when the underlying base and the subgrade is still adequate for the fleet mix operations, and the surface can be removed or improved to maintain those future conditions. This is typically a 10-year type repair project, and really some of the similar acronyms are runway overlay, a mill and fill, or things of that nature. So it is a 10-year type fix. The more intrusive type of project is a reconstruction, and a reconstruction is required when the underlying base and the subgrade is no longer sufficient to support operations, or the level of effort for a rehabilitation type project is no longer cost effective. So we evaluated several different types of rehabilitation as well as reconstruction options. Next slide, please. So with the rehabilitation, we basically built 7 different types of pavement models within the FAA design software package, and those were evaluated for the different types of rehabilitation as well as reconstruction methods. And based on the cost, the construction duration, and quality, as well as the longevity of improvements, the reconstruction option prevailed. It was actually more cost effective than the rehabilitation option. This is largely due to the poor subgrade underlying below the existing pavement section. The very low strength required more aggregate base and a thicker pavement section for the rehabilitation option, which further exacerbated the level of effort for the MELZF approach lighting system, edge lighting system, things of that nature. So the reconstruction option did prevail, and we reviewed the different pavement design alternatives as well as the costs and construction impacts with the FAA, and they concurred with the reconstruction approach as well. So once we nail down what the preferred method is, we started looking at the phasing alternatives, which Jeanette will talk about next. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Jeff. Yeah, so we analyzed 5 different alternatives, and with these alternatives, we took into consideration the safety, the runway availability, the project duration, and the cost. And then, so here we'll be presenting to you 5 alternatives that we analyzed, and these include Alternative 1, which is a full runway closure with no arrivals or departures. Alternative 2, a 2-phase construction with limited runway availability. Alternative 3, which is basically a 3-phase construction with limited runway availability, and then also a full runway closure in between the 2 alternatives, in between the 2 ends of the construction. And then Alternative 4, which is closing the runway and then converting taxiway Foxtrot to a temporary runway. And Alternative 5, which is to close the runway at night, so do construction at night only. So some of these alternatives were found to be unfeasible, so we'll explain more in the following slides. And just so you know, construction is expected to be happening in the summer or fall of next year, 2021, and this is all subject to FAA funding. So next slide. So for Alternative 1, we analyzed what could we do with the full runway closure. So basically here there will be no arrivals, no departures, and all the taxiways will be closed. And then also there will be no airfield facilities, like the PAPIs, all the navies will be turned off. And this allows for more concurrent construction operations, and then the approximate duration for this construction, it's about 3 to 4 months. And then we'll need like an additional 2 weeks of night closures for doing the grooving and the final pavement markings. And next, Alex will talk to you about the Alternative 2 analysis.
Thank you, Jeanette. So understanding the impact that full closure has on the airport tenants, we wanted to look at some other options to potentially mitigate that. So if we go to the next slide, we'll see the first exhibit of what Alternative 2 is. This is basically chopping the project into 2 major work areas, so about half and half. And the runway length was decided based on, keeping the 2.5 threshold where it is displaced, and then setting the runway 7 threshold so that pilots have access via taxiway Charlie. And that resulted in about a 2,500-foot runway. So although this does allow for some aircraft to operate, the larger aircraft that use this airport are not able to. So you're probably getting some of the larger turboprops landing on this, but not much more than that. And you can see you get about half of the project site to construct. There's about a 400-foot clearance to allow a safe distance between construction equipment and the aircraft that are on approach. And it's assumed for all these reduced runway alternatives that the airport will be operating under VFR conditions and daytime use only. If we go to the next slide, this will show the second half of Alternative 2. And this is construction picking up where it left off on the first side. Same 400-foot clearance. This allows for approximately 2,100-foot runway. Pretty much the same type of aircraft limitations on this side. So you get about a range, from 2,000 feet to 2,500 feet of reduced runway with this scenario. And this would add probably about 2.5 months to the duration. So you'd be looking at 5 to 5.5 months for this alternative. Next slide, please. So another thing we wanted to look at is, could we operate on a longer runway than the 2,500? And it is possible, but it would require an additional phase in order to make it work. So the next slide, please. So you'll see that we're looking at a 4,000-foot runway. Significantly reduces the amount of construction that can take place while the runway is operational. And although a 4,000-foot runway will allow more aircraft to operate, still not all of the aircraft will be able to. Most aircraft with wingspans over 79 feet will probably not be able to operate on it. And the safety zones are similar to the previous alternative. If you go to the next slide, you'll see the impact of trying to maintain a 4,000-foot runway is that eventually the remainder of the project still needs to be constructed. About 75% of the project is still remaining, and this has to be done under a full runway closure, which will probably not be too much less than a 3-month duration in order to construct this. And then the next slide shows the east portion of Alternative 3. So you have the 4,000-foot runway open on the other side and constructing the east end of the runway. And then this alternative is likely to be in the ballpark of 6 to 6.5 months of overall duration. Next slide, please. So in addition to trying to split up the runway into various closures, we wanted to explore the possibility of using Taxiway Foxtrot as a temporary runway. So if we could go to the next slide, we can see the exhibit for that. The issue with this alternative is the proximity of the taxiway to the surrounding facilities, namely the hangars that you see there within the object-free area, and then there's some landside areas that fall within the runway protection zone. So, and this is with a 60-foot, reduced to a 60-foot runway as well, and there's still issues with these clearances. So because of the safety zone compliance issues, we consider this alternative to not be feasible. And then finally, I'll turn it back over to Jeanette, and she'll explain the night closures.
Thank you, Alex. So the last alternative that we analyzed is it even possible to close the runway at night and do all the construction at night and then reopen during the day? So basically what this will entail is closing taxiways and runways for 10 hours during the night and then reopening during the day. But then we found that this alternative was not feasible because due to the nature of the work activities, because we'll have, due to the reconstruction, the grades of the runway and the taxiways will be changing, so construction will not be possible to be closing and opening every day. And then also the creation times for the subgrade, we'll have to let it cure for approximately like 7 days. So trying to reopen every day wouldn't be possible. So next, Chuck is going to talk to you about the survey results that we had in the first workshop.
Okay, thanks, Jeanette, and thanks, Alex and Jeff, for your slides as well. So this survey was conducted during that public workshop that was held on August 25th, and we asked the audience these two main questions. What is more important to you? And is it limited runway availability, or is it expedited construction duration? So limited runway availability refers to alternate 2, where you have one part you have 2,500 feet of runway, and then the other phase you have about 2,100 feet of runway. And then expedited construction duration applies to alternate 1, where you're closing the runway and the taxiway down all at once, but you're getting the construction done in the shortest duration. So next slide, please. So this slide, and this was actually the people that attended that public workshop were able to see this. They were able to compile it during the workshop, to be able to see the results. So we had 42 participants take the survey. So we had 20 people that replied they would prefer the expedited construction duration, and then we had 22 people respond that they preferred the limited runway availability, which is at alternate 2. And so those are the 2 main ones that we considered as part of that. So those are the results right from the survey, and the people that were attending that got to see those results. So next slide, please. So in addition to, at the end of the public workshop, we conducted a Q&A session, and we had a total of 27 questions that were received. And let me start off at the bottom. We had, prior to the workshop, we had 5 questions that were submitted via email, so we read those aloud and responded to those. And then we also had 14 questions received via the raise hand feature in Zoom, just like we have here. And then we had, in addition, 13 questions received through the chat feature. So those are the results from that first public workshop based on back on August 25th from the survey, and then also the summary of the questions. So next slide. So we also wanted to identify future workshops and contact information as the design moves forward, and we're anticipating planning to do a workshop in the months of October, which is after the 60% design would be complete, and then again in January prior to the project being fully designed, being completed, so we can still get input. And then we have a way people can provide questions. They can be either through the email that's shown here, or there's a helpline number as well that they can leave a message, and then we compile those, we'll respond to those, and so that way people could still ask questions if needed. So next slide. So this is the time we'd like to open it up if for any questions during this presentation.
Thank you. Oxnard Airport Authority members and Camry, if you want to weigh in also. If you have a technical question, please ask it now. We do have a member of the public that wishes to ask, and we will discuss after the member of the public speaks. Does anybody have a technical question they wish to ask? Okay, then I'll ask the technical question. You're contemplating doing this construction during a rain cycle? We normally have a rain event in this area that starts in October. And I see that you'll have the final drawings done in January. So we would be expecting construction to be completed before the rain cycle starts, because there's mention of a cure day, a cure requirement of 7 days. That's a technical question.
Yes, correct. The plan for the project right now is to have go out to bid in the month of February and have the bids open in March, and then anticipating the FAA grant, and so that project can get started in June timeframe.
Thank you very much. Okay, we have a public comment from Mr. Mark Sullivan, and Anna will assist. Thank you very much, Anna. Thank you.
Someone dialing?
Yes, we're calling the member of the public.
Hi, Anna.
Hi, Mark. Calling you for public comment on the Oxnard Airport project, and if you're ready, I'll start the 3-minute clock.
Very good, thank you. Good evening. My name is Mark Sullivan. I'm a renter of 2 hangars at Camarillo and a hangar at Oxnard. I'm also a partner in a small avionics-related company based at Oxnard. Since the workshop, I attended the workshop, and since the workshop, had a lot of discussions with other people at the Oxnard Airport, mostly hangar renters. And the question we have is, I've done a public records request on this the other day as well, is we're really questioning some of the assumptions that Mead and Hunt are making. Specifically, on one hand, it's obvious that Golden West and the other commercial users, it's really critical that they not be shut out of business too long, which means expedition is hugely important to them. For the small general aviation guys, however, we believe we could stay in complete use of the airport under option 4, which Mead and Hunt is dismissed as being infeasible. In so doing, if I understand from the presentation, they've been using an assumption of a wingspan aircraft greater than 79 feet, which would be FAA Aircraft Design Group 2. And the question I have is, if the taxiway is 60 feet wide, which I believe it is, and there's lots of clearance at either side, I'm not understanding why that couldn't be used as a temporary runway for Class 1 aircraft. That'd be the typical general aviation single engine up to a light twin, like a Baron or a Duke, maybe at the largest. And there'd be plenty of clearance. I don't think it'd be illegal if I'm understanding the TOFAs on the diagrams. That would allow the airport to proceed using either, if in the 3-phase, option number 3, the shutdown is the same as option number 1, but in the 3-phase, you'd have 4,000 feet available for the medium-sized airplanes. You'd have the minimal total shutdown, but if you had taxiway F open for Class 1 aircraft, or even Class 1 aircraft under 4,000 pounds or 4,500 pounds, the majority, I'm going to say 90% of the users of the airport would be able to continue using it during the entire period. And like I said, looking at this, I understand they said it was infeasible, and I'm assuming it's infeasible for Class 2 aircraft, or ADG, Aircraft Design Group 2 aircraft. I don't understand how it would be infeasible for small Class 1 aircraft. So I'd really like to know what the reasons are behind that, because it would seem if we could have a hybrid of option 3 with taxiway F open for the small aircraft, it'd be the best of all available worlds. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Does any staff want to address this question?
Yeah, I can start off if you want. I understand the question to be is the option to be, or the feasibility to use alternate 4, which was using taxiway Foxtrot as a temporary runway. And the main concern with that is even for aircraft of Design Group 1, although we were discussing Aircraft Design Group 2 up to a 79-foot wingspan, but even with the Aircraft Design Group 1, the safety protocols that the FAA has in place, and that's what we have to design the project to, would be in question if we could meet that or not. And that was or not being able to meet it because of the buildings that are associated and the hangars within the taxiway object-free area. And also in addition to the runway protection zones as well. So that really got to be, although we're looking at Design Group 2 aircraft, it really filters down to Design Group 1 aircraft, where it really is, it's an issue as far as being able to meet the safety protocols that the FAA has in place.
And Chuck, if I could add, when we talked about Design Group 2, we were referring to alternatives 2 and 3. But the exhibit for alternative 4 was looking at Group 1 with a 60-foot runway.
Yep, exactly. So we really were looking at the smaller aircraft, realizing the larger aircraft of Design Group 2 really wouldn't be able to use the parallel taxiway as a temporary runway. That even applied down to the smaller aircraft as well.
Okay, in full disclosure, I'm not a pilot. I just know that when I get in an airplane, I expect to land safely. We do have members of the Oxnard Airport Authority that are pilots. Do any of you have questions that you want to ask? Because on this particular item, or the answers that were given to the member of the public? Anyone? Okay. Okay, if we don't, any discussion by members of the Oxnard Airport Authority? And I do believe that since this is impacting one of the two, that if somebody from camera has got something to say, step up and say something. because I'm going to ask one very blunt question. My understanding is this will shut down a portion of the airport. This sounds like the elephant in the room that I haven't heard anybody address. Are there going to be considerations to the people that are paying rent? Do they get a discount on the rent? Is the rent waived? And I don't need that answered right now, but I expect somebody to be able to answer that. Thank you. And whoever...
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead. Who's ever...
My question is, how long before we can find out for sure from the FAA when we can open, when we could use taxiway as a runway for the Class 8 type aircraft?
Okay.
Because as I understand right now, we're not sure whether or not we could do that.
Okay, does...
Well, we can go back to the slide.
Beg your pardon. Does staff understand the question so that we have a clear... Mr. Fussell deserves a straight-up answer. Does staff understand the question? Or the consultant? A yes or no?
Yes, you understand the question. Can we, my understanding of the question is, do we have an understanding whether alternative 4, if we can use the parallel taxiway as a runway? So maybe we can go back to that slide in the PowerPoint. There we go. Alex, maybe I'll have you walk through this again just so we can clarify what our analysis did.
Yeah. So I can kind of even go back a little further than this. So, because we were looking at Group 2 for alternatives 2 and 3, we did look at Group 2 for this because, Foxtrot is a 75-foot taxiway, so we wanted to look at a 75-foot runway. The hangars were clearly within the ROFA and also within the OFC. So we tried, okay, let's see what a Group 1 looks like. And it got close. The hangars are still, like you can see here, they are slightly within the object-free area.
Does someone have a PowerPoint that they can point at the screen, please? Thank you very much.
Runway protection zone. So those were the safety zone concerns that we looked at.
So that's going to be a 2,500-foot runway. It wouldn't be longer.
The length of this one, there's some flexibility into looking at different. The main point of looking at this alternative was to figure out if the width would be doable with the safety zones. So we just were showed a 25-foot runway, but there are some other options that could be considered for length. Yep.
But also, too, to answer your question, we can also present this to the FAA so they can make a formal reaction to this as well. But our initial, we do have structures inside the object-free area for the runway, even at Group 1 standards.
Mm-hmm.
Are there, is there any more points?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead, please.
If at all possible, I'd like to have the formal reply from FAA and see can't we make the taxiway longer than 2,500 feet.
That does not sound out of line to my way of thinking. That sounds like a total reasonable request. Mr. Turner, does that sound reasonable to you?
We can definitely get a formal feedback from the FAA. Two things to keep in mind. The FAA is going to pretty much give us, we anticipate the answer that Meeting Hunt has already come to because of the safety standards. And also, if we do get some type of waiver from the FAA for a reduced safety standard, it increases the liability for the county. So that's something to keep in mind as well. But we can definitely get the FAA to give us the formal response. It does put a potential, slight pause on the project, or maybe not. I'm not sure. It depends on how long it takes the FAA to get back with us. And we are under very tight timeline design. So, but yes, if it's the wishes of this authority to get a formal answer to something that Meet and Hunt has presented tonight, we can pursue that route.
This is Long. I think that would be good just for the tenants and the pilots to understand. I think that's important that we should just have that.
Very good.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, go ahead.
can anybody hear me?
I hear, I don't know who's talking, but I can hear somebody talking.
Yes,
Oh,
Walter.
Mr. Thomas, okay, hello, I see you, yeah, I see you.
It's Calhoun. I have a question, if permissible.
Go ahead, please.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I need to direct this to Chuck. Chuck, you in your I was at the workshop, incidentally, and I still came away with the same question. The last significant amount of work, I believe, I'm not incorrectly quoting you, was in 92 when a substantial resurfacing took place, which was consisted of, I won't add any conjecture to it, but anyway, that was the last major reconstruction time. I remember quite well the work done at that time, and it was pretty significant, but it was done very, very quickly. I believe the total construction time, including the cure time, was around 7 or 8 days. Now, I also believe, and I could be mistaken, that this was simply a fairly complete overlay system. Now, would you categorize that work that was done in 1992, which is almost 30 years ago, as just a reconstructive or a complete rehabilitation?
Well, I'll start off on this, and I think I'll let Jeff add some information. And if it was it sounds like that was, if it's that sort of a project, that's more of a mill and overlay, which is a rehabilitation. Whereas, as Jeff described, as during a reconstruction, which is, that's looking at the subgrade. Can the subgrade support the pavement surface structure? And in this case, it's been determined that it cannot. So that's why reconstruction is the preferred alternative here. So in that case, then you do have to go dig down and dig it out, recompact it, and allow, like in this case, like a lime-treated subgrade to cure, so it does have a cure time on it. Jeff, if you want to add some more thoughts to that past 92 construction?
Yeah, based on the records we do have, it was a full reconstruction, and also based on the asphalt core data that we have, based on the thicknesses, it would also imply that it was a reconstruction, because if it was an overlay, some of the cores are quite thin, down to 2.5 inches, and so it would be unusual to have that as a short-term rehabilitation project. I'm not sure what the duration was back in 1992, but we do have to comply with current FAA requirements if we want this, if the county does want this funded under AIP, which is, the pavement section that we proposed.
What is the total depth of the reconstruction project where all of the subgrade is replaced?
So based on the reconstruction with the preliminary fleet mix that we have, it would be 4 inches of asphalt over 8.5 inches of base over a 16-inch lime/cement treated subgrade section.
So about 24 inches roughly?
Yeah, give or take, yep.
Okay, that lime-treated, and I'm asking you the question, you're the professional, that lime-treated system, that can be laid down and cured fairly quickly by virtue of the lime, can it not?
So the lime treatment process involves, so they come in, they build the subgrade level flat, they come in the first day and basically mix in a lime-type treatment, and then they use basically a large rototiller, and then they compact it. Based on the soil conditions here, that has to then cure for 5 to 7 days. They come back again, inject more lime, remix it, and then they compact it, and then it's another 7-day cure period. So it's about a 14 to 16-day process. And the biggest advantage with it, and just to add, the reason for this is there were traces that indicate that the water table, when we did our geotechnical investigation, it went down 10 feet. Although we didn't hit any water, there were traces of calcium deposits that imply that water was within that section. and this lime and cement treat process really does form a very tight barrier to keep water out. And some of the base that we did find was, it's 28 years old, but it was dirty, implying that the subgrade material started to infiltrate upwards, which further decreases the strength of the pavement. So this will help protect the future pavement section of the runway and taxiways.
Right. Yeah, that sounds good. Well, the subgrade itself, what do you anticipate as work being necessary there? Is there any? And I'm directing this question to you as part of the concern about getting the runway back open again. When we get this down to the subgrade and it's a disaster, let's say it's completely wet, it's unmanageable, and it's going to take some drying or some more cement treating, could that extend the runway delay opening even more, or do you have a cure for that problem?
Well, we don't have, the cure is going to be, we're going to, based on the geotechnical information we have, that is built into our schedule. We are anticipating there's going to be areas that are very wet. The good thing is with this process, it's very, the material has to be very wet in order for the lime to react. So we will have, I don't want to say contingencies, but we will have allocated drying techniques, geogrid techniques, so we don't have to stop the project, wait for a change order, wait for direction. Those different areas will be built into our contract documents to continue to progress the project seamlessly. But the subgrade values that we do have are pretty much the lowest on the charts. So we do expect moisture, and we're willing to make, but we are adding different techniques in our specifications to be able to mitigate that quickly.
Okay, and so basically the lime treatment is going to satisfy those concerns of mine.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, I think, Jeff, you raised a good point. Those types of situations, we're building that into the schedule and the type of design we're doing because we've seen the geotech report and seen what the results are showing.
And this is similar to the pavement section that we're using, or this lime treat site process is similar to the various pavements around the Oxnard Airport that we've reconstructed, the largest area being the East Apron. I believe that was about 10, 11 years ago. And that's holding up quite well with the same type of pavement section design.
Do we have any other questions by the authority? Hearing none, I'll ask one more question.
Yes, just a quick question. So once we do this, how long will it last us?
Right now, the way it's designed for FAA, it's at least a minimum of 20 years. So to receive the FAA grant dollars and the way it's designed and per their requirements, it's at least a 20. But with good maintenance, as the county does on pavements, you can well exceed 20 years into the 30 years. So you can get, with good maintenance that the county's already doing on their pavements, it'll last a long time.
Okay, and I know that this is a big thing that someone who has their hanger there and is flying there does not want to go through this. But I do feel comfortable, at least with saying that we don't have to do this for at least another 20 years plus. At least I can say in a positive way that that's a good thing. If they were to say, oh, in 5 years you had to tear this up again and do it again, that'd be unacceptable to me personally if it was the case. But I do appreciate the longevity of this once we do it, and just to make sure that it's done correctly. That's a big deal.
Exactly, and that really raises the FAA pavements are really a very stout pavement section. The what's called P401, it's the asphalt pavement. It's a very, very good pavement section. It's not something that you see on it's not a highway pavement. It is very unique to airports.
And does this pavement also help with the planes, like longevity of the tires or anything that would assist in longevity of the planes as well, or no?
It doesn't really affect it one way or the other. It's a pavement section that's used throughout the country. So FAA is a standard section of pavements for both, like in this case, asphalt, that's used all throughout the country.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions? Okay, Ms. Long brought up an excellent point. I'd like to know, when this job comes through, we have errors and omission insurance on this, correct? If the job doesn't work out, either the consultants or the contractor, somebody's on the hook, as Ms. Long made it, we don't want to come back in 5 years with egg on our face. Can someone answer that question?
I'll start off as far as, yes, but from the design side, there's errors and omissions on the design. And also for the contractor, there are liquidated damages associated with the contractor. So, and the FAA has a liquidated damages section, a penalty section built in on the pavement. If it doesn't pass, then there's an associated damage or take it out.
Appreciate that.
Is there a bonus for early completion?
As far as FAA does not allow bonuses for early completion, like you would see maybe on a Caltrans project, but they do have the penalty if it's not done correctly.
Thank you. Any other questions from board members? If not, I have a couple of questions.
Mr. Chair?
Let me get my questions in, please. Okay, we had 42 responses out of a 70-member public. That's 60%. Is that normal from the consultant's viewpoint? You get 60%, 40% didn't have an opinion one way or another?
Yeah, I would say that's probably a good response level if you're talking about the amount of responses that we got from the questions, the two questions that we asked.
Thank you very much. The second thing is it was mentioned about the water table, and one time there was a higher. Earlier in approval of the minutes, there was a question about something that had happened there. I forget the name of the company, but there is a plume in the Environmental Protection Agency. If we get down and we start to get into something like that, are we prepared? Is the county, those two supervisors on this board, are they aware of that, and are we covered? Because I think that would be an unforeseen circumstance that could be very, very expensive. And
Jeff, maybe I'll have you, if you can respond to that.
Yeah.
Or is the plume?
So we did go down 10 feet, and we did not find any water, but there were traces that there was excessive moisture in there because of the calcium deposits. But we certainly don't expect because of the grade changes in order to meet FAA compliance, we're going to be doing minimal excavation. Even though our pavement section is 2 feet, our excavation down before we start treating the subgrade is only going to be a foot or so. So we certainly don't expect to find water. But what we are doing is implementing, it's called an underdrain system, which is a system on either side of the pavement to capture any of the water before it gets up to the pavement section. That will be tied to the storm drain system.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the clarification. Are there any other questions? This is identified.
Chair?
Go ahead.
I don't know if you could hear me. This is Member Flynn.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. And I came in a little bit late, so I apologize to the authority. So 4 and 5 aren't feasible. 1 and 2 are. I didn't get 3. I'm just wondering if we could revisit 3 really quickly.
Sure. We can go back to 3. If we can take the slides back to 3, and then Alex, if you can just walk through alternate 3 again.
Yeah, sure. If we could just go to the next slide. And in fact, why don't we go even to the next slide, because that kind of, I don't think we came out and said that this is an unfeasible option, but I think that the disadvantage to this, or at least the configuration that we're showing in this alternative, is that when trying to keep 4,000-foot runways open on either side, there's only so much construction you can do when that runway is open, so the remaining construction that has to be done under a full closure is not significantly less than if you had to do the whole project under a full closure. So you're about double the duration of the construction, but there's still a significant period of full closure. So, not an infeasible option, but it's a matter of considering what the sacrifice is by maintaining a 4,000-foot runway.
I see. And then the duration of this alternative, how long is that?
So we try to come up with rough durations for these. We were figuring that this alternative for the entire project is probably 6 to 6.5 months.
So it's comparable to number 2 then?
Yeah, so 2 we were looking at 5.5, about
okay.
6.5.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, good. Okay, those are my only questions, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you
This is Kelly Long, and so this is just a receive and file on this item. It's an information, is that correct?
Yes, it is a receive and file, but Ms. Long, you and a member of the public did mention that you thought it would be a good idea to do the FFA, and I think that would also be. So I'd like to make a request that we make a motion to protect the staff, the airport authority, and the county, that we make a motion to get that direction from the FFA, or whatever the title of the organization would be. And I will make that motion. Do we have a second?
So, Tim, I'm sorry, Bert, I'm having a hard time hearing you. So you're saying to receive and file the workshop?
Beg your pardon, Ms. Long, my microphone, that is my screw up. I apologize wholeheartedly to the board and to the public. This is a receive and file. When the question was asked by one of the Mr. Fussell, member of the public, alternate, having to do with certain things, and there was mentioned that there could be a report from the, I believe it's FFA. Please help me, staff. Is it FFA? FAA, I beg your pardon, FAA. With respect to that, I think it would be a good idea, especially since Ms. Long, the supervisor, weighed in and thought it would be, if I heard her correctly, a good idea also. I think it would be a good idea. I think that to protect the staff, the county, and the agency, I think it would be a good idea to have a motion that is included, because to his credit, Mr. Turner explained that there could be some issues in asking for that information. And with that point, I'll make the motion that we do get that information from the FFA. I'm looking for a second.
Kip, can you clarify, you had concerns with us asking for the letter? Is that correct?
No, ma'am. The only concern that I would really have in terms of waiting for the FAA to give us a formal response would be a possible delay in the design, because we can't move forward with the design until we choose an alternative. So any delay that is of any significance might mean this project takes a total delay as far as construction as well. So that would be the only concern there, because we are up against already a very, very tight timeline. Actually, the design is in an accelerated pace as we speak. And then the only other concern in addition to that, even if the FAA were to give us a waiver of some type, which I don't envision, but if they did, it is possible, I guess, but if they did, I do have a concern that it would put some undue liability on the county if we accepted that, knowing that we're violating known safety parameters. But those were the two concerns I had.
Okay, well then, I do not want to delay this project, definitely. So I just want to make sure people understood that.
Okay, the motion's still on the table. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Roll call vote, please.
Supervisor Long?
Yes.
Supervisor Zaragoza? Supervisor Zaragoza? Mayor Flynn?
Aye.
Councilmember Perallo?
Yes.
Walter Calhoun? Supervisor Zaragoza, is that a yay or a nay?
Yes.
Thank you. Walter Calhoun? Walter Calhoun, could you unmute, please? Walter, I believe you.
Not here yet.
He's on the line. He's just muted. Mr. Calhoun, are you unmuted? Okay. Eugene Fussell?
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
And I would just ask Kit that please let us know if there is any delay because of request of this letter. I think that our board would want, or our authority would want to know about that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, that's the item for the Oxnard. It's not, thank you very much.
All right, we will take new business for the Camarillo Airport Authority. Item 6B, approval of and authorization for the Director of Airports or his designee to execute the Fifth Amendment to lease with Fresh Concepts LLC to expand the leased premises. Does staff have a report?
We do, Chairman. Thank you. Fresh Concepts LLC is the parent company which manages and operates the Waypoint Cafe, which I think probably all of you are aware is a world-class airport that we have operating on the Camarillo Airport. Due to the COVID-19 restrictions requiring restaurant operators to provide outdoor seating throughout the state and probably the country, actually, and service with social distancing, Fresh Concepts desires to expand its outdoor seating area. It has been determined that it requires an additional 5,757 square feet of patio area, as exhibited in Exhibit A in your packet, which making this the Fifth Amendment to their lease, comprising existing of the outdoor improved areas only and the patios adjacent to the viewpoint in the Camarillo Airport. I can tell you that this request is a very common sense request, quite frankly, for a number of reasons. This area sits right in front of the Waypoint Cafe, and it would normally be associated with this leasehold anyway. For some reason, it was not already. There is an element of the viewport, which is a park that was put together and formed a few years back. A very nice park. Whom the Waypoint or Fresh Concepts LLC is a major contributor and partner to that effort. So the other partner to that was the Department of Airports and also a nonprofit group known as the 99s. So we've had a number of conversations with the 99s. Their board took a vote and unanimously approved to support this recommendation as well. So the Department of Airports recommends to the authority and then ultimately to the Board of Supervisors to recommend this approval.
Thank you very much. Do any authority members have questions? Yes, Ms. Craven.
Yes. I didn't read anything about a change in the term, so I gather that even though this is due to the COVID-19 pandemic and the requirements associated with distancing, this would be a permanent change. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. They would. They're already making investments into that area to better accommodate their guests in that area. It doesn't look like it's going to be any time soon that we're away from COVID. Unfortunately, we all wish that would be the case. But realizing that now we're running 5 months and no real end in sight, they're having to contribute additional investments into that area to be able to accommodate their guests and better lighting and tables and equipment and furniture and all kinds of changes that they can better talk to than I. But anyway, so yes, this would be a permanent lease amendment for them.
Thank you.
Do I have any other questions?
Yeah, is there if everything goes back to normal and they have a constriction of, I don't think I'll ever see it, but if you have a fewer participation, the increased rent might be something that they'd like to discuss on getting it shrunk back in. Is that capability present?
Well, the Department of Airports will always entertain attendance needs or requests. So if that were to happen, I don't envision that happen because of the investments they're making into the area. But if that were to be the case, we'll definitely explore that and consider whatever the request is at that time.
Any other additional questions? Seeing none, do I have a motion for the staff's recommended action?
Yes, considering that many people consider this the best restaurant in town, I think that we need to go ahead and approve it, and I'll make the motion.
I'll second, or Bill, either one of us.
You got it.
All right, Mrs. Craven motioned, Mrs. Long seconded. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Supervisor Long?
Yes.
Supervisor Zaragoza?
Yes.
Councilmember Molshay?
Yes.
Councilmember Craven?
Yes.
Bill Thomas?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
All right, with that, we'll go on to item number 7, Director's Report. Director Turner?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, or Mr. Chairman. I wanted to first provide an update on the Aspen option agreement. You may recall that this is something we brought before your body, first in front of the Airport Commission on July the 6th, and then in front of your bodies on the July the 9th. We pulled that from we had it set also for the Board of Supervisors agenda for July 28th. However, we pulled that from that agenda because we ran into some concerns related to the taxiway Foxtrot final design that may or may not infringe upon that property a little bit. So we wanted to further vet those concerns before we took that to the Board of Supervisors. So I just wanted to provide this board or this authority an update on that since we had brought it to you before. And then I wanted to provide another update as well to this authority in relation to the Cloud 9 option agreement. Due to work being delayed due to COVID-19 reasons, their current option agreement expired on September the 10th, 2020. They realized that due to the delays that had been related again to COVID, that they needed an extension to that option agreement to continue their work. So because their extension, their option expired before this body met and before the, right as the commission was meeting, we went forward to the Board of Supervisors and got approval for that extension. And I wanted to update this authority that we had taken that action in regards to that. That extended their option agreement to March 10th, 2021. And then another update for this authority is to remind the authority that we are still hoping to finalize the lease templates for the revised lease templates that we've been working on. We would have already brought these back to you. Actually, you may recall we last met on the lease revisions back in March, and this authority or these authorities asked us to look at 6 other items that night in March. We went back and we further explored those 6 items that we were asked to look at. We actually made additional modifications to 5 of those 6 that we think is going to be pleasing to everybody when we talk about it. One of the 6 we could not, but we'll talk about that when we bring it back. The update for tonight is that we intend to bring this back to the commission for hopefully a final discussion on November the 2nd, and then to your bodies on November the 12th. And then we also have a date scheduled for the Board of Supervisors to get the lease revisions adopted on December the 8th, 2020. And that is all for the director's report tonight. Short and sweet. Happy to take questions.
Thank you for that. Are there any questions? Director Turner, I only have one myself. That's in the monthly activity report. It's page 8A2. I noticed it here. I haven't gone back and looked at historical figures. Are we at Camarillo Airport? Are we simply seeing more accidents occurring year over year? I seem to read about it more often in the newspaper. And is there any trend between accidents occurring at the airport?
You know, I guess I would have to lean to my staff to find out, or maybe some of you that have been veteran authority members. I've only been here a year and 4 months. I can tell you we've had our share of accidents in the year and 4 or 5 months, whatever I've been here now. But whether or not, and that's a fair question and we can follow up, but whether or not it compares to an annual trend of accidents, I don't believe accidents have been tracked on an annual basis here, so to speak. But we can definitely explore that further, or maybe we may have some veteran members of the authority that can speak to that, or maybe even staff.
Yeah, could I make one point? One of them is that they're listed as incidents. In the aircraft safety world, incidents are one thing and accidents are another. But we haven't really had 8 accidents. We've had a couple accidents, including the fatal that happened last year. But as far as incidents, that sort of runs as part of the routine, the last one being the gear-up landing on that Rockwell Commander. And that probably is not totally unusual for Camarillo.
Okay. I'm sorry?
We're on number 8 right now?
We are on number 8. We're on number 7.
7 still, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah, and Sean, also, I think that there's not as much news going on right now. Just with everyone being home and COVID and all that other stuff, that it just seems like it seems bigger than usual. But that's my own opinion.
Okay. Well, thank you. If there are not any other questions, then we will go to number 8. Okay, as another question, we'll go to number 8, reports. Does anyone have any questions in regards to the reports? Mr. Perello.
Yes, I do. On number 8, page 8A1 and 8A2, kind of align with the previous questions that were asked. We show aircraft incidents, Camarillo year-to-date 7, Oxnard 1 for the month of June 30th, ending June 30th. But we show citations, Camarillo 0 and Oxnard 7. What is the correlation of incidents and citations? That is one half of the question. The second half of the question is for the next month, ending July 31st. We have aircraft incidents year-to-date in Camarillo. There's another one, so they have a total of 8, and Oxnard is still the original 1, and yet Oxnard has 2 more citations. I'm not saying that there's disparity in enforcement, but can there be an explanation, please?
Yes, sir. I'll try to make that a little more, put a little clarity to that maybe for you. So as Mr. Thomas pointed out, our incidents refer to unfortunate mishaps, if you will. It can be anything from the example that Authority Member Thomas provided of an example of a recent wheels-up landing by an aircraft. It could be a flat tire on a runway. It could be there's no one. Those are a couple good examples. So incidents are unfortunate mishaps. Citations are what they sound to be. They're punitive in nature, if you will. It's either parking violations and please bear in mind, we don't just go out. In fact, we avoid citations as much as possible. But there are times that we have to control the airfield environment to make sure that there's not undue hazards being created by people parking in places that create undue safety hazards for the airfield. So usually for us, if it's a citation, someone's already been warned a number of times, they're still blatantly ignoring the warnings, and by the time they get a citation from us, they're really asking for a citation.
Do we have
hopefully that helps.
It appears that we have a little bit more history of a little more recklessness in Oxnard than Camarillo. Can I make that assumption as a non-airplane person?
We do tend to have more compliance issues at Oxnard, is the only way I know to say that. I'm not sure why. I haven't figured that out yet, but for some reason we do tend to have more of those kind of concerns or issues at the Oxnard Airport. That's correct.
Thank you very much. Those are my only
If I could
questions.
add something, most of our citations at Oxnard are for the pay lot and the auto parking in front of the terminal. A lot of people park overnight in the 20-minute parking lot, and that's when you'll get a citation there. Or if they don't pay for the pay lot and we audit it, then they'll get a citation there. So it's not necessarily Oxnard's more reckless, but it's more, there's more auto parking at Oxnard than there is Camarillo.
Thank you very much for that.
John. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
if I could make maybe a recommendation, is that we ought to make apples and apples, where we have any citations that are inside the fence or under the guise of FAA or airplanes ought to be in one column, and outside the fence ought to be another.
We can do that.
That's all I got.
Any additional questions or comments on number 8, reports? Seeing none, we'll go down to correspondence. Are there any questions in regards to correspondence?
Yes.
Mr. Perrello?
The correspondence, I have 9B1. Tremendous. I really appreciated reading this letter. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. I know the company in question has done tremendous work, but the rules are good for the goose, the good for the gander. And is there an outcome? What was decided on this? Was the 8%, the reduction from the 10% to 8%, was it taken care of? Because the date of the letter is June 25th. But I'm extremely impressed. The makeup of the letter, the wording, the explanation, this is what I call, and I've gotten in trouble in the past for saying the word plain English. This is very easy for me to understand, and I appreciate the staff. Mr. Turner, this is a compliment to you and your staff. But I would like to know, was the penalty taken care of?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That penalty requires a public hearing, which we are scheduling with the Board of Supervisors, and it is also in the mix of some other discussions or negotiations, if you will, in relation to that project. Either way, you can rest assured that the Department of Airports will ensure its interests are met one way or the other, either through the continuation of the process of the hearing or through some type of negotiated settlement to this.
Thank you.
And we'll definitely follow up once one of those has been achieved.
Thank you very much.
All right. Any additional comments or questions on correspondence? Seeing none, we have nothing under miscellaneous. Do any authority members have any comments they'd like to part with? I'll take the silence as a no.
Yeah, could I ask just a real quick one? I see that Oxnard is working with an ALP for airport layout. Is there a similar airport layout plan in the works for Camarillo?
So I'm glad you brought it up, because there's nobody that's trying to spread this news more than I. We have now got a master plan study funded, $750,000 study funded, that's been in front of your bodies for voting of approval and voting of the contract. And simplicity of answer to your question is that master plan study also, of course, includes an airport layout plan update in the course of that study. So yes, and a lot more than that, because the study is a whole lot more detailed than that.
Well, for the rest of the authority, one of the things that we're interested in from the air show side of it is a more detailed layout schematic of the areas around where the pedestrian and the spectators watch the air show. And if there's anything that we can contribute in conjunction with what the airport is doing, we'd love to help, because it would really help us in our planning, and we would like to not do it in a vacuum, but we'd like to do it where it helps the airport too.
Yeah, so two things. One, the department is I've already offered actually to the president of the air show organization that the department would fund and provide any schematics that they feel is adequate or necessary. We can use a couple of our services that we have. Meet and Hunt does that. Also, Kaufman does that, our planning services, and we'd be happy to fund that, because we find that would be valuable as well. And then the second thing is we want those voices heard for anything in relation to either of these airports during this master plan study. So I am soliciting as hard as I can solicit for everybody in Ventura County to participate in the master plan study. Anybody, everybody, please that is what these studies are for, is to get that participation. So that is a study where we take a back seat from a staff perspective, and we have a third-party organization, in this case Kaufman, conduct the study. They conduct the workshops. We sit and take notes, and we listen. And we listen to Ventura County. We listen to these bodies that play into these discussions we're having right now. We listen to our leadership. We listen to the town's leaderships. We listen to the people that live next to the airport. We listen to everybody that wants to weigh in, and that's what these studies are for. So, yes, yes, and yes.
Nice job, Mr. Director.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Can anybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you,
Walter.
Okay, a point of clarification, back to the runway resurfacing. I had some communication problems here of my own. I did make the second on that motion of Bert's, and I also voted affirmatively on the action itself. I just wanted to be clear.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any additional comments by authority members?
I'll say something.
Mr. Perla?
Okay, I appreciate the director's report tonight. I appreciated the update on the hangar issue and the discussions that have been going around. I want to thank the Airport Authority for putting the ad in the newspaper. It was great to see that. It did generate questions. I didn't have answers for them, but it did generate questions, and it gave the opportunity for the public to make phone calls and find out for themselves. I would only add this one point, which I think it will impact Oxnard. As elected officials, we get phone calls about people complaining about the noise of airplanes. There may come a time during this construction where it's extremely quiet, and I expect after the work is done and the good works are done and people get back in the business of flying their airplanes, there will be more complaints about noise. But that goes with the turf, living near an airport. But a very good meeting. I want to thank the Oxnard and Camarillo Airport Authority. And a big shout out to staff. Staff has helped me with this iPad and has helped with getting information to my city so that I could have it, and all involved. Thank you.
All right, if there are no other comments, then we will move to adjourn the meeting of the Camarillo and Oxnard Airport Authorities.